Hi, everybody. This is Nate here, and I wanted to welcome Andre to my channel. Welcome, welcome, Andre.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you.
A lot of the viewers really enjoyed our conversation last time when we were pretty general, but still talking about the current times and what astrology can do, what a card reader can do, how can we navigate those times. And so I wanted to thank you for that previous show because it helped people put a little bit of perspective on the current times. Unfortunately, the current times have not really improved much since last time. But today I thought we would do a little bit of a show on the cabinet members to give them a little bit of a look. I know we talk a lot about Trump and Musk, but there are a bunch of people here that have been chosen to lead the government. And from the astrology standpoint, and maybe doing a couple card readings on them, we might be, sharing our perspective on a few of them, the most iconic, I would say. So maybe before we get there, maybe from your personal opinion, Andre, out of those people, is there one in particular that you feel like very negative or detrimental or just from your own gut feel?
Well, I would say that all of them. I can think of one person in there. The theory is that the way the media explains it, Marco Rubio might be the most benign, but I have doubts about that as well because he's sacrificing so much of his integrity to fit into the Trump administration's objectives. So really, I mean, who do we point to? RFK Jr., he has some really strange ideas, and when you start seeing measles outbreaks that haven't happened in long periods, and his theory is to just, say to people, vaccines are optional, or his theory about the bird flu is let it spread. People think, wow, okay, that hasn't been tried before. It's crazy. So who do we point to say this person is better, either because they seem malevolent, or they seem crazy, or they seem incompetent, or they seem all three, or two out of the three. So who do we pick? They're really the whole lot of them to me are problematic. Some are a little more behind the scenes for
Hmm.
now, then maybe they'll emerge for a little more. But I mean, we could start anywhere. What
Hmm.
about you? What do you think is the first we could talk about?
The one that I really dislike, and that's been like a gut feel from a long, long time, even feeling last year, is a Tulsi Gabbard, because the director of national intelligence, covering all the different agencies, with a profile that it's so cryptic and so you get the sense of someone that you can't really trust here. And every time that I looked at her, she's a complete flip-flop. She has her own agenda. The proof is she has flip-flop on pretty much all the issues. She was Democrat, then Republican. She was against Trump, then she was pro-Trump. I mean, you, and to have someone like that lead, what it's like 18 agencies related to national security. I mean, that's like a big deal to me.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And what I noticed when I looked at hers, she's one of the ones that I only have the day of birth, but I don't know a birth time. There isn't one available. So then it means that her lunar position has a range, although it would still be a Leo moon. That doesn't tell me that much. What's more relevant is that she's has a lot of planets in Aries, and then planets in Libra, lots of cardinal in astrology, that's cardinal. So that's 3, 8. It's a lot of cardinal energy. And so that puts her in this pattern where once Saturn and Neptune, but Saturn for sure, Saturn entering Aries, which it does in the summer, but especially next year, because in the summer it's there for the 3 months, then it comes back again into Pisces for a while. In the spring of 26, it enters Aries, and it's in Aries all of 26, or most of 26, all of 27, and parts of 28. And she does fall into that pattern where her cardinal planets start getting pressure in the spring of 26. It grows, right? And I noticed this with some of these, practically all of them really, of the cabinet
Mm.
members, that this pressure from the Aries energy increases. Tulsi also has another problem, another astrological problem from mid-year this year extending into next year, like pretty much the whole time. That's a different planet. That's the Uranus cycle, but that one may or may not bring her down or create a big problem for her, because that planet, what I notice is it shows up a lot at that middle age period when a person is making a big change in their life, which is what she's done.
Hmm.
She's made this big move, and the best explanation for this, I think it's incredibly lucky that someone this unqualified would be handed this much power. I mean, it's just
Right.
nuts.
I know.
And to me, it's a pattern I've seen in astrology when uh, a really benefic planet like Jupiter does something in the progressions. Like we're born with planets in a certain place, then you look at the days after birth, and if the day number, which corresponds to the year number in progressions, equates to a planetary station, something big can happen. And she's 44 years old, and Jupiter stations precisely at 44, which is a classic big break, big move. Jupiter can do that. Now, the explanation as to why it would for her, I'd probably need the birth time to see if I could put that Jupiter somewhere that would make sense. But both of those are happening simultaneously. And at the same time, let me put it to you this way. When someone is not really competent, Saturn cycles are harder. They're just harder because Saturn is hard even for a person
Hmm.
that is competent.
Competent.
So I would say that if we're patient enough, she falls into that pattern where next year things start to get harder and harder. And that could be, who knows, scandals, setbacks. I don't know. It's hard for me to know, other than to say when you have 5 planets in Aries and 2 planets in Libra, no, 3 planets in Libra, you don't want Saturn anywhere near those planets.
Yeah.
Could be,
So
it
she
could be
could
a
be, you're
problem.
saying that she could be under pressure next year.
No, she's going to be under pressure.
Under pressure.
Going to
Okay.
be under pressure, and also with Saturn, you get just more bad news, more problems, more setbacks, including all the way to potentially losing your job. Yes, it's on the table for sure, right?
I've done
And
a
it
couple.
includes the fact that March, sorry, spring of 26, you see this pattern where you get more Saturn pressure. And so you see what could happen. This goes to the other uh, pattern that's really important. When people ask, well, how do we stop this? To me, it makes more sense. It's more reasonable to think that if we're going to put a brake on the Trump administration objectives, policies, whatever, it's through the electional process. When people
Hmm.
say, oh, no, NATO will intervene and they will come and save us, that seems to me to be quite
Unlikely.
unrealistic. Now, it is true, though, that problem is we've got all these cycles, interweaving, coming together. So, for example, yes, it is entirely possible that someone like Trump becomes disabled on account of his health. That's in his chart. Yes, it's a possibility.
Yes.
But
Yes.
astrology only shows you doorways, where it goes, this
Right.
could happen here. the odds are high. But if it doesn't, then to me, you have to be realistic and assume that he'll be there until he leaves in 4 years. Or then the next question will be, well, suppose something does happen to Trump. That doesn't mean the GOP, the administration disappears. You have to assume that some form of Trumpism still remains, even though he may not be there for the 4 years. So, but if you're going to stall it, check it, push it back, the logical place would be in the midterms when you
Hmm.
can elect a different Congress, because right
Yep.
now, as people are noticing, the Congress is not applying any checks and balances to
Balance. Hmm.
Trump's
Hmm.
or Musk's, or they're simply ignoring it. You can start talking about why, blah blah blah. That's what's happening, right? So anyway, Tulsi, she falls into that pattern though, and becomes a little suspicious. Like one of the things I look for in charts is, does this thing repeat? And you'll hear me point to all these other guys. They do have similar patterns. She's one of them.
Interesting.
Yeah, she's one of them for sure.
I have done a full reading on her on my channel, using the 36 card system. And it's a little bit like astrology, like you don't get necessarily full predictions because it shows patterns and places and things like that. But I got the sense from it that I see her as a snake. I see her as someone that cannot be trusted. And I don't feel that trust should Trump should trust her. I feel that she could also do something against him, because I feel that she's such a flip-flopper, and she seems to have a lot of interests, and personal interest, and will do things primarily that benefit her. It could very well be that she does something against him. That's the feeling that I've got. Now, if you extrapolate a little bit from that, I also thought about, can you imagine those people? How many of them it's just a thought or an intuition? How many of them are journaling what they're experiencing? How many of them are potentially one day taking notes on what they're experiencing and wanting to publish a book? This has happened during Trump 1, where those people surfaced and then they came against him. And so to me, she fits kind of one of those profile where she cannot be trusted, but she's also very sneaky, and who knows what she's doing. She could, I mean, when you have access to intelligence systems and secrets, and you could record conversations very easily. So I feel like he should be afraid of her. You see where I'm going with this?
Actually, I didn't mention that, but yes, 100%. The reason being, there's a pattern that you see in the people that Trump works with, hires, and she has planets that are not exactly the same, but it's the same pattern as Michael Cohen, the lawyer that was Trump's loyal servant, and now he's a fierce enemy. He turned against him, and uh, yes, she has that. And as a matter of fact, those energies get triggered next year. So there you have it. Yes, it's very possible. And this is one of the things that also, but by the way, this would be a positive thing, I
Oh yeah,
think,
of course, of
right?
course,
Be positive.
of course.
But one of the patterns that I definitely see in Trump's uh, fate, let's call it that, is that the way the cycles are, in addition to health vulnerabilities, which would be the worst, obviously, because if you become incapacitated, then
Yeah.
that would be the worst. But a level out from that is that it is extremely difficult to keep your support staff in line with the way his chart is. So he's going to have betrayals, which he had in the first administration. People started betraying him. Now the assumption is, no, no, no. He's put in loyal people, but you're pointing out that this woman is
No,
not loyal to anybody. So yes, that's an example where she might suddenly realize, oh, the current is changing. I'm doing it for myself. And she strikes at him. Of course, this puts all of us, makes everybody nervous now because then you think, wait a minute, she's in charge of the CIA.
exactly.
This cannot be good because it's like saying, the military could rebel against Trump. Well, that doesn't sound good either. I mean, there aren't great options, but I would rather see that, I think,
I know. It is just scary all around because it's like it's a very unloyal person who's in charge of 18 plus intelligent agencies. And yes, it makes me feel somewhat better that she's unloyal to him, but it's still not a great feeling to have someone at the head of the agency. That's the whole point.
well,
And I think it's also a pattern with Trump where he thinks people are loyal, but frankly, even his daughter is not loyal, hasn't been loyal. So I think it's a big weakness of his. He thinks people are loyal, but they're not.
no, and this is an astrological pattern that you see in relationships between people. You do need challenging aspects. Two people will never form an alliance unless they have a blend of harmonious with some disharmony to create a kind of dynamic friction so you can grow, presumably. And I've verified this in my astrology journey many, many times. But you don't want too much dynamic energy. And with Gabbard and Trump, there's too much of that. There's way too much risk of it going wrong. And then you look at, okay, well, when might it get triggered? I remember in the previous administration that I had told people in 2017, I think Michael Cohen, well, no, sorry, let me backtrack. When Michael Cohen wasn't arrested, he was raided by the FBI or something like that in the early part of 18. And I immediately said, he's going to turn on Trump because I could see the patterns. Sure enough, he went against him. And Gabbard is another example of that, right? Now, of course, don't forget that he can fire people and bring new people in.
Of
So,
course.
so from that vantage point, the energy in 2026 is more than enough for that to happen to her because
Okay, okay.
she has three different planets in the direct line of fire. And they're all also not only in the direct line of fire, they're in the direct line of fire for Trump and her together.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, it's a problem.
wow.
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. Who
Yeah.
would you like to pick next, Andre?
You
It's like
mean,
the buffet. You can pick,
I
and
know,
find.
like, do you mean to run the CIA or do you mean to the ones that are there now? Well, let's see. So the other person that I've got here that is in the cabinet is the Hegseth, who is
Oh,
the head of the army. And his, well, first of all, another one that in this case, it's the transiting rather than the days after birth stations. It's the transiting Jupiter because he's a Gemini and he has Venus in Gemini, and he was given all this power with Jupiter going through Gemini. This is common where you see Marco Rubio falls in this category as well. Trump is in this category. The Geminis, right, get the effect of Jupiter. But he, same thing next year. What happens is that as we go into the spring of 26, he's got a planet in Cancer, Mercury, which is the ruler of Gemini, runs into Saturn. Saturn, and not only runs into Saturn, it runs heavily into Saturn because at election time, it's in direct square to Mercury. And I look for a pattern like when I see a pattern like that, I think, okay, well, if that election doesn't go well, his life is made way more difficult than before
mhm.
because then he can be called into Congress. At minimum, the situation changes from ease to restriction, which is Saturn's favorite trick. Saturn, the way Saturn hassles everyone, me, you, whoever, is
Yep.
it narrows your life. It just comes in, it squeezes, it says, okay, you thought you had room. I'm going to take away some room. And of course, who would be more deserving than this man who's a drunk and a molester? And I mean, he's just the worst of the worst. So he's got that problem. But even ahead of that, he's got other problems, even this year, I don't think he'll be in the background. I think we're going to hear from about Hegseth, and he's going to get attacked mercilessly and have problems already in 25 for other
Well,
reasons, like because where the Neptune cycle is and Saturn too. Saturn is not all that friendly from the fall, from September to the spring. So it could even start sooner, but then it's the consequence that interests me. When you go to 26, it's interesting to see that he's got that same thing, a planet parked that draws the Saturn in. Same with Tulsi. What is your analysis on him?
well, my intuition, I didn't do a deep dive on him, but my intuition talks about with him, it's more about personal problems. You mentioned the addictions, the drinking. I could easily see drugs. I could easily see affairs. It's like there's a lot of things going on with him that to me, I get the sense like scandals could surface very quickly. And so I could imagine that over the next 12 months, we hear inappropriate behaviors overseas, things like that. Because
It's
yes,
possible, yeah, it's possible. There's enough here from the two big planets, Saturn, Neptune. Saturn, Neptune are currently very late in Pisces, making their way into Aries. Neptune will be in Aries for the next 13 years. It's been in Pisces since 2011. Saturn, it's only for 2.5 years, but they're super important to what is happening in the world, and they're not helpful to him. They're not. And Neptune and having a scandal is a really good fit. Although Saturn is great for scandals too. I mean, if you want to get in trouble,
yeah.
just tempt Saturn. And so, yeah, I agree with you. Entirely
There's
possible.
all yeah, the other thing with him that I feel as well is more prone to conflict of interest, money deals. The defense industry is a huge industry. And so, we saw that I mean, that's actually in the video that I just put today about Musk is like, he is I'm just making like a 10-second discussion on Musk. He is because it ties to the defense. Musk businesses, whether it's SpaceX or Tesla, they are a big supplier of the defense industry. And so him being in at a minimum a role of deciding what stays, what goes. Do we need the F-35 or the type of planes or there's a huge conflict of interest, being in the decision making, but being a vendor or supplier of the defense industry. And I can't imagine except not being in the same boat because he's in the decision making process and he's going to award contracts and make decisions. So those two, I don't know if you have looked at those two in particular together, but
Yes.
it
You
almost
mean
feels like there would be some sort of weird relationship here.
you mean you mean for Hegseth, the money?
Excess and yeah, in Musk.
Yeah, no. Okay, so Hegseth, what you just said fits 100% because the Saturn rules his money house, his own personal
Ah,
money house. That's the first problem. The other problem is if you look at borrowed money or invested money, then you bring in he's got a late Pisces moon, and that's getting hit by Saturn. Yeah. So the answer to that is 100%. But this is what's curious too, that this guy fits into the 26 downtrend pattern, and so does Musk. Musk especially. Musk, it's clear as can be that next year things are brought to account. The problem is this year there's some of that. He's experiencing it now. You know, I
yeah,
mean, his stock is down, all that, but he does have some strong energy as well. He's got because he's a Cancer and Jupiter's going through Cancer, and I notice with these people, that even though they're as quite malevolent, we're all seeing it. The Jupiter does help them to go to a certain
yeah,
place. Now, of course, remember with Jupiter, it's the same in personal astrology. In personal astrology, the warning with Jupiter is always be careful what you expand into. It may not turn out the way you think. Be really careful.
Mm, mm, mm.
You think this thing is going to expand and then make you rich. It might make you broke instead, or you expand inappropriately in some other way. It could be a relationship, could be whatever, and then it
Yes.
collapses on you, right? So uh, that's how you often see people like this crash and burn. At the risk of going too much off on a tangent, but really quickly, this is what happened to Hitler. He had a Jupiter expanding period and he opened too many fronts, which is another thing that these guys do, by the way. They become so confident, Jupiter,
Hmm,
that they
hmm.
start, I'll open this front. I can just fight everybody at the same time. No, you can't. When you have too many enemies, they get together and they bring you down. So, but yeah, anyway, long answer to say 100% agreed that money conflicts and money problems, yes, could become one of the reasons this guy gets in trouble, which is
Interesting.
which is actually not that's not army related, so that's interesting, right? Because
Yeah, it's money. Well, plus he comes from the media, isn't he? Like from Fox News.
Fox News,
So,
yes.
like from the media, there's already relationships, connection. There's a corruption level inherent
Oh,
to
completely.
the media.
And he has the media. Neptune is the most media planet, not on the high end, obviously. On the high end is the most spiritual, but Neptune, the more it descends, the more media is not good or bad. Media is whatever you make it. But if you keep going down all the to the bottom of the Neptune barrel, you get the deception, the gaslighting, the deception. That's what these guys do. They're constantly lying through their teeth, telling you up is down is up, right is left. To try to confuse, to deceive, to dissimulate. So, and he's a champion at that. And then on top of it too, they're often these people are often themselves delusional. They have
Oh,
strange
yeah.
views of the world and they believe it. One part is the lying, and the other part is I have this world theory that someone on the outside thinks that's not true, but they believe it's true. So yeah.
Hmm.
But anyway, that was a long answer just to say I agree with you. Yeah. Uh,
Who should we look at next?
so let's see. Well, one that uh, RFK, right? Because he's the health
Half
person.
Czar. Well,
And this is one where there's a time that is not 100% verified beyond the birthday is known. Almost all these people's birthdays always becomes known. But the time is a little not totally verified. The reason I use it is because it makes a lot of sense to me based on the way he looks, behaves, and the things he's been involved in. It makes a lot of sense that this is a probably an accurate time.
mhm.
So this guy, though, my feeling is that odds are not until next year will you hear pressure. But again, another one that falls into the exact same pattern in 26. Why? Because not because of his sun sign, but he has the moon position at 13 degrees Cancer runs into pressure starting in about a year from now. But right through the election period, which once again, guy like this, he doesn't want to have a Democratic Congress. That would be a real problem because then they're going to call him to explain, really explain, not just say things for the media. So that's how that looks, right? But he would be, of the ones we've talked about so far, the least pressure in the near term.
Yeah, yeah.
Takes longer.
Mhm. I understand. I see him having issues because I feel like maybe not as bad as the previous pandemic, but there's viruses in the air. Like I feel like we know there's more and more problems. And I feel like he's gonna have to deal this year, next year with some sort of virus-based problem. And I feel like this is gonna test him real very, very much. I feel like to the point of having some restrictions, when it comes to, even travel or things like that. Not as much as what we got in 2020, but I feel like there's going to be some problems. And so he and in his administration be able to deal with some sort of pandemic light or virus of significance? I don't see him well equipped to deal with that. So is there something in his chart that would show like maybe a situation where his incompetence is more visible?
Well, in his chart, the the pattern is that much like Tulsi Gabbard, he has a lot of cardinal energy because Capricorn, Cancer, some Libra, and even a bit of Aries as well. So all of that brings pressure from the Saturn cycle, which starts a little bit this year, but is not in full force until next year. The thing is, though, that in his chart, a lot of the energy that is high pressure doesn't really start till next year. Then it does.
Okay,
By the time you go into 27, 28, 20, it's definitely there. It's high pressure energy. So for all I know, this guy could be the worst in terms of having the whole thing collapse because his thinking can be so, to be honest, crazy. I mean, some of the things he says to me make no
I
sense.
know.
The thing is, though, he does have some good ideas too. It's just that
Yep, yep.
he doesn't give me any confidence about proper implementation because you just learn about how people behave. Some of the things that have come out about his behavior are really reckless and arrogant and uh, so. But anyways, he that to make it clear, just because I might say we may not see a whole lot of trouble till next year. Once it starts, it'll continue. It'll continue till the end of the administration. Which, by the way, remember with all of this, including the people we talked about already, Tulsi Gabbard, when you get pressure, you can be fired, you can be
Of
removed.
course, of
Yes,
course.
it's not. There's no guarantee that you have the pressure and you survive, especially with someone like Trump. I mean, Trump's
Yeah, I mean,
if Trump is
erratic.
around to erratic and he always his favorite mode of operation is it's not my fault, it's his fault, fire
Of
him that
course.
way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Something a bit kind of a last point with him, more what I feel intuitively, and it's a little bit ironic in a way, is like he's in charge of health, but I feel his health is actually a weak point for him.
It is. Well, first of all, he's 71 years old. And he, if you think, could these aspects affect health? Saturn always affects health because what I notice
Hmm.
about Saturn is even when you're healthy, when Saturn is around, you always tend to feel less healthy. There's something that happens to you that you think, oh, geez, like, oh, I feel like time is catching up to me, or I feel I'm catching too many colds, or Saturn just has a way of doing that. But Saturn ruling time and ruling old age, it's worse the older you are. And
Of
he
course.
already has
Of
some
course.
health issues,
Yes.
including bizarro things like reporting that a worm ate part of his brain, which seems strange, but sometimes makes sense based on some of the things he says. I don't know, but yeah, one of the things is if you've got many cardinal planets like he does, and Saturn is in the square formation or opposed or conjunct, right? Any one of those. It's more difficult during those years. Now it's affecting Tulsi Gabbard as well, but she's younger. She's less likely to be
Yes.
affected. There are exceptions always, but she's by the actuarial tables, this guy is yes more likely to experience it as
And
a
with him, it's like compared to the other two that we looked at, there's way more of a crazy energy. Like it looks crazy.
yeah. I think you're right. I think my well let me tell you the astrology of well why is that because then you start thinking why does he think that way because he I think he has ideas that he genuinely believes
Hmm.
convinced that they're true and the explanation for that is like a lot of these guys have for other reasons. One of the ones we looked at Hegseth, Neptune opposite. That's a media person, but also potentially a liar, a deceiver, but always to, when you say deception, there's self-deception. It's not just that you deceive
Ah,
others, you deceive yourself. So this guy, Robert F. Kennedy, Neptune really tight square the sun. He is that way. He has some interesting, subtle perceptions that give him unusual ideas, but Neptune is classic for deceiving yourself as well. And
yes.
just objectively, when I look at some of the things he said, they don't make a lot of sense. And and one of the things that you should do when you have a strong Neptune is check it with Saturn by, for example, doing some measurements. And like, what does the data say? And one of the things that is out there is the fluoride in teeth, and places that have taken the fluoride out of the water discover that people's teeth rot. So
Mhm.
he has this idea that they should remove the fluoride. So I guess the next thing we'll learn is that he has a some kind of deal with dentists. Is that where
Yeah.
we're going?
Yeah, yeah, I see where you're going. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So yeah. So
And you don't get
the,
as much as the corrupt, which might very well be, but with the other, it just smells corruption. With him, I smell more the crazy.
yeah, and I can align with that as well. But I mean, to me, the biggest takeaway is that if I start seeing a pattern where multiple people that are kind of a gang, I mean, I put them all on the bus, they're all together doing this thing.
My
I
God.
want them to all have Saturn pressure at the same time. That's what I look for. He does. 26 is a
Wow.
problem. Like, you can see this guy, for example, if everything continues as is, you can see him having to deal with a lot more pushback, 26, 27, 28 from where Saturn is. Plain and simple, right? So, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
One that I would be curious about, but I don't know if you have his chart, is Patel, Cash Patel.
I do. Patel is one, though, again, where only the birthday, not the birth time. Uh, and this one was probably the trickiest around fitting him into the same pattern of next year. It's there, but it's a little looser in that it could either be based on his birth time. It could either be right away in the spring of
Mhm.
um, of 26, or it could take quite a bit longer, but it's there enough, right? That he too falls into the same pattern where conditions can change going into the second half of the term, right? Which is what you need, because he's head of the FBI and they want to operate in secret. And, but previous FBI, like Christopher Wray, he would go before Congress and answer questions. This guy, if he's ever brought before Congress to answer questions, it's probably going to be a bit of a comedy or a comedy drama of some kind because of how nutty he is. Do you put this guy mentally in also a bit of a crazy place? He certainly looks crazy.
I get that, but I also feel that this guy is always on edge, and I get the sense that he's gonna, like flip the table at any moment. You get that feeling like when is that guy gonna flip? Like he trying to hold himself, and then I get like he is so on edge and high temper. I get that with him. I don't know if you see what I mean by that, and you can see that what might look like in his chart, but I get the sense like he is not the best to control himself. We kind of saw a little bit of that. I don't know if you watch on the confirmation hearings. I mean, it was such a during the hearing, like he was like answering like very silly ways. He was remember there was a where was like he told the whoever was questioning him, you have only 3 minutes left. I mean, this is not for him to say. This is whoever's hosting the chair. And he would play this game of saying, well, now you only have 2 minutes left. And it's just very, very, very arrogant guy.
Well, that is there. You've just identified classic astrology definition. If you have the sun opposite Jupiter, the potential for arrogance moves up. Why? Because Jupiter is the expansion energy. That's what a lot of these guys have in large measure. Musk is this way. Trump is definitely this way. So sun opposite Jupiter. I'm not saying that every person, because this is the other thing.
No.
When we say these things, people will watch this program and then they'll say, well, I have sun opposite Jupiter. Are you calling me arrogant? No,
Oh, no,
I'm not.
please don't put that in
No,
the comment just yet.
this is the like astrology is the intersection of a person's will, karma, many things that cause them to be the way they are, and the planets, and they express, pardon me, the planets on a range. So Jupiter on the good side of the ledger, of the frequency is it's a positive energy, it's enthusiastic, it's happy, but then it starts to from the expansive principle, the expansive archetype going astray, arrogance, indulgence. This guy has Jupiter opposite Sun. Arrogant makes sense because we've seen it. That's how you know. And then what else? Mars is conjunct Jupiter opposite the Sun. He's combative. He's
Ah,
angry. He wants to fight. So, and yes, he could do rash things. He could do rash. He could engage in rash behavior. The thing is, though, with the FBI, not only is that dangerous to the public, it's probably dangerous to him, as well, and to his own job. Because I've often wondered, how do you control all those really smart agents? You have to be really smart to get into the FBI. And when you're trying to control all these people, they might form some resistance to you and start to create problems for
that's
you.
right.
This may happen to Tulsi Gabbard as well. So, but in any case, one way or the other, he still fits into the same pattern as the other people that are on the bus, so to speak. And there's also a period at the end of the year. The Saturn cycle from September to, let's see here, from September to February to March is quite challenging for him because it runs into his own Saturn and he'll feel it. He'll feel the restrictive energy of it. So next year also, but even before, we're going to be hearing problems, right? It's possible as well, April, May, the Saturn goes through there, this April, May coming up, but it moves through pretty quickly. So my feeling would be that it would be unlikely to get enough of a grip to get him in major trouble. But once you get into the end of the year, that swath of time is more dangerous to him. That's what
And
I got.
and you're right about the agency. The age is not the agency. The agency is the man and the woman working at the agency. That's not him.
Well, and if you told me what would be the most dangerous thing to try to control, isn't it obvious that it's a lot easier to run the interior department or now they're getting rid of the education department, but practically any department. The two departments that I would be most paranoid would be the CIA and the FBI,
Of course. Well, yeah.
obviously, because of who is there. These are people that are trained to catch criminals. They're very perceptive. And one of the things about this guy, which is very common, by the way, to this whole crew of people on this bus of madness, and Trump is the leader, and Trump is the same way, Musk is the same way. They remind me of teenagers that never grew up, that like
Oh, yeah.
immature, stupid people. The way he was reacting to getting the job was how you might see a teenager telling his friends, and it's like they haven't matured. Well, first of all, none of this makes me confident about the country, but on the positive side, it makes me more confident that they're probably going to step in a puddle, and get in trouble, right?
It's
Like that.
interesting you mention, CIA versus FBI because obviously those departments have to work hand in hand very often. And so that kind of triggers a question for me between Gabbard's chart and uh, Patel's chart. Do you see conflicts, potential conflicts, or alignment?
That one I haven't done. That's a great question, though. Uh, I have to look at that more
Okay.
carefully. Remember that both of those there's going to be more speculation and that there is no time, no birth time for either one.
Right, right, right.
But no, but I would think based on your assessment, which I agree with about Gabbard's sneakiness, and Patel is totally paranoid, so that's another thing. So, I mean, can we just guess? The common sense tells you there'll probably be problems. What is the
Oh,
likelihood that
yes, of course. And
there'll probably be
I mean,
problems?
my
Yeah.
intuition feels like she could have the upper hand here. Um, because I feel like she's more manipulative, is more, I could see him like the deer in the headlight, and more, is not the best poker player.
So he could get, so he could get an.
Like you can read his like like you can be low display or high display with emotions. She's very low display, is very high display. You can read him from his face. And so I feel like she can totally play him. Um,
Okay, well, that's a great question. I just did even though there's some uncertainty about the moon position because neither moon is known, but the combination chart, the composite chart of Patel and Gabbard, that points to trouble in let's see, in May. May is a problem because Saturn is going through there pretty hard. And then it could leave already like a wound or an injury that persists, but it becomes a real issue later in the year. That swath of time when Saturn returns into Pisces for a few months is very bad for their combined chart. So yes, so that you just identify, if you saw it in the cards, it's the potential is definitely there. With composites, I noticed that even though it's a bit of an abstract chart, you're taking two charts and combining it, so
Binding.
you look for the midpoints. But I've seen up close things that were very strange and very spooky, where something would be happening to me personally, where neither
Mm.
chart was being triggered, but the composite was being triggered.
Ah,
And something would happen that I thought, wow, that fits perfectly, right?
perfectly.
So,
Yeah,
and then here we're talking about it's like two people that run separate nuclear submarines. It's a dangerous. It's not just two people relating at a shopping mall. It's two people that are in charge of big, impactful.
massive. Yeah,
Exactly. So yeah, so there's a definite potential for serious problems
that's
emerging.
interesting. Well, we're gonna have to watch for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So who's next on the list? I've got Pam Bondi here, the
Yes,
general.
and she, interestingly, we don't hear a lot about her.
No, we haven't yet,
Yeah.
uh, but we will because this is another one. When you see the the pattern, the 26 pattern, because and I'm anchoring this. I know that it's a projection on my part because I'm trying to assess, okay, these people are going through what else is happening? The midterms next year, the election.
Hmm.
So she's a Scorpio, late 25 degrees, but it's not the Scorpio, it's that she has Mars and Venus in Capricorn. And Saturn finds those planets a little bit in the summer. So I think you're going to see more conflict and more more problems for her June, July, August because that Mars runs into Saturn. So that's one problem. But then next year, once we get into the spring, it's continuous. And she also, like the other ones, they all have this thing that planets get affected during the midterm year, which once again, the last thing she wants is to have a Congress that is hostile to her because
Yeah.
that causes problems, means that they have to go and defend themselves.
I haven't looked at her. I'm gonna pull a couple cards live just for fun. And the question would be kind of like what's ahead of her? Bondi, what's ahead of her? What are the energies coming through Bondi, the Attorney General? What are the energies? Hmm. Okay, so first, the Queen of Pentacles. So this is interesting because we're talking about a woman and we see her holding money. So that's kind of a first clue. Then the Seven of Pentacles, this is about, again, gaining and making money. So I would probably ask you, this is an interesting aspect, like how is money in her chart? Is that a big factor on the finances? Because I get the sense from those cards that there's like she has achieved to make some good money from her previous dealings. This is one of her motivation. Where is this connection?
That one, without a time, with
Okay.
Hegseth, when I
Yeah.
said I could point to the money houses, I don't know where they are in her
Yeah.
case. Although it's funny that, of course, this is your department, but I drew three cards for her and I got the Nine of Swords, the Four of Cups, and the Five of Swords. That's not good.
No, well, my third card was the Three of Cord, the Three of Swords. This is one of the worst cards.
There
It
you go.
feels to me like there's like a big letdown, there's a big disappointment, there's like a heartache, like something seems to go really wrong. And and I ask like in what connection? I got the Emperor, which to me would say in connection with Trump, like a disagreement with Trump.
Well, now funny that you say that because her chart, she's born in 65. She's gonna turn, she's 59 right now. She'll turn 60 in November. And she has very similar planet positions to Michael Cohen. And these two, Pam Bondi and Trump, have had a long history of alliance together because it's not the first time. He chose her because in the past she's cut deals for him. There were money exchanges that she did. She received money and
Okay,
then
well, that's
she,
the money coming from. Exactly.
okay, right. But the problem is that, like Michael Cohen, and possibly even worse, there are, yeah, she's one of those people, that Mars and that Venus that I talked about are extremely dangerous to Trump because I've seen this pattern before with people that are his, in astrology, it's called the house of your servants or the people that are your inferiors, so to speak. I mean, no one should be your inferior, but that's what
Mhm.
it is. If someone works for you, the sixth sign. So those Capricorn planets are set up to bother Trump. And then there are other things. Her sun squaring is Mars. The Virgo planets are the same as Michael Cohen. They can become viciously problematic at a certain point. So then you realize all of that gets triggered in 2026, right? So see, you start to see a pattern where it's even conceivable now that we've been talking for a while. Maybe he's going to completely change the entire cabinet. I mean, that's possible. He's done it
Well,
before.
it's just odd that all of them has this big hurdle, and it seems like there seems to be conflicts between themselves and him between them, and it's like a big mess.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, not to belabor the point, but what have you seen Trump do other than create messes constantly? That like during his first
One,
term, he fired everybody. Why is
well,
it going to be different
I
this
know.
time?
One thing that I think we can agree of something is it doesn't do well, is very poor at, is leading teams and
Right.
promoting teamwork. And so when you lead a cabinet, it's like the CEO of a company. You have all your departments and they need to work together as a team to drive the ship. And it is completely useless with that. is just thinking of himself. He doesn't even see himself leading a team. If you ask him today, his president is not leading a cabinet of administrations.
No, he has them fighting with one another and absolutely. So yeah, and I mean again, this with Trump, I can point to past patterns where
Patterns.
these things surfaced. So this is a case like, you remember Bill Barr. I remember saying, "Oh, this doesn't look good," long before Barr. Barr was working for him. When he left the administration, he did not attack Trump right away. It was afterwards when they started to do the investigation that he was even using swear words to say, "This guy, he's just making up BS. He just says things, they're not true." So he became an enemy, literally. Well, that's from those planets that are in those spots that challenge Trump's chart, right? And Bondi has them, right? But this is the pattern that you also see, that people do get together with these challenging aspects because they're more dynamic. It's like the idea that without them, you can't start a new business or do something that is challenging, change conditions in the world, all of that. They're needed, but then depending on the personalities involved, they're also very risky. And she definitely gets triggered in 26 in the spring. And there's a point here. See also that end of year, fall 25 to spring 26, where Saturn and Neptune both are roaming around. That's also risky because she does have one planet in the way. That probably won't be enough though. It's more next year that is a big problem, right? So
I see.
yeah,
Very
she's also part of the
interesting.
parade, part of the people on the bus. Yeah, I don't know. And then the one we haven't talked about yet would be Marco Rubio.
Okay, let's finish with that one.
Right. So Marco Rubio is again Gemini. That explains uh, the stroke of luck, to be chosen to be Secretary of State, and the prevailing wisdom or the prevailing opinion is that he is the least comfortable because he has a measure of honesty. I'm skeptical of that. But I mean, he maybe. I think it has more to do with the fact that Marco Rubio hates Putin. He hates Russia, and
Yes.
is very uncomfortable with what Trump is doing in that sense. But as far as his honesty, no, I've seen him do things that are incredibly dishonest. He's very self-serving, and there you see, well, why? Because again, the Neptune, if you see Neptune opposite the Sun, we've already talked about RFK from the self-deception point of view of Neptune. Pete Hegseth has Neptune opposite. It's very common with these guys. So, but his, to my mind, a couple of things. One would be that it could fall apart on the earlier side because what was the reason here? Okay, so he has Saturn in very late Taurus, Saturn at 27 degrees Taurus. And Saturn frequently relates to your job in the world, to your obligations, to what you're doing. It's going to be important. And Uranus happens to be there, conjoining that Saturn pretty much the whole time between May and May of next, like for a full year. It's roaming around in there. That could end your job, because Uranus, who knows? I mean, something can go wrong and you're gone. It's finished. If he survives that, then he also falls into that pattern in 26, where, like all the other people on the bus, the Saturn locks in on them. But of course, if he's not there, then it'll just be that he'll be upset that he's not there, or I don't know, some other thing will be bothering him, right? But he would be at risk. It's definitely an unstable situation for a year
Mm.
in terms of keeping his job or having to quit or, that kind of thing. So that's how I see that one.
Let me put a card on him. Just curious. Rubio. The Ace of Wands. So to me, someone with that type of pattern cares a lot about power. There's like a drive, to have the power. I feel like this is ego driven, this is power driven. He can't refuse an opportunity, and he would compromise on his ethics for power, right? Um, and then if we look at where this is going, Nine of Wands, like this is a card of getting hit. Like he's not gonna like what's coming his way. It's gonna be a rough road for him. One last, same as Bondi, the three of swords. This is
Yeah, I
not good, not good.
I drew the Seven of Swords, so he's not telling the whole truth. And then Five of Pentacles, Eight of Swords. This is not good. No, this would be
Loss, a sense of loss.
loss, and it's too much. I mean, you need at least something. You need, I don't know, the Seven of Cups. Give me anything. Help me out here.
Well, yeah, but I mean, and I'm like big. I mean, we know we discussed like I'm big on like if you pull three cards, that's three cards. You don't get a bonus card to make it better. That's all you
No, I know.
got.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah, the thing is though, when you see all three, what I with for me, the three for Pam Bondi and the three for him, they're not good. This is the kind of
no,
thing where
those are like really. This is not just tough. There's a sense of loss and grieving here, meaning that you lost quite a bit, including possibly your job.
exactly, which is it's definitely there as a possibility. I mean, even speaking logically without doing any mystical analysis of any type, it looks that way anyway because he can't be comfortable with what he's seeing. I think
No, no.
if he were in
Hmm.
charge, he would never implement this policy this way. No. I mean,
No.
I think Marco Rubio is pro NATO. He's pro
Yeah.
NATO.
And his background, by definition, is against. I mean, he didn't he escape Cuba?
His family, I think,
Yeah,
escaped.
him. No, not him, but the background
Yes.
and people. I mean, you gotta have like a very anti-Russian point of view.
Yeah, although you see, Russia now is not really communist. Russia is oligarchic. Russia is become
True.
it's authoritarian, although you could classify Cuba and Russia in the same place through the authoritarian, because in a way, is there a big difference between oligarchy and, well, I would say oligarchy is probably better for the economy than what Cuba
Oh,
does,
wait, yeah.
but even so, it's not a good system because of how oppressive it is as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Andre,
yeah. So
I think I wanted to close it up unless there was something else you wanted to say, but I wanted to thank you. For me, that was absolutely fascinating. And just listening to you and getting your perspective on all those people. So I hope the viewers enjoy as much as I did. I'm sure they will. And also maybe just share a little bit that you're doing personal readings. People go on your website and can book you kind of.
yes. No, I do personal readings all the time, and it's on my channel head. It says if you click there, you see where the channel is, how to make book readings, and all of that. And remember, for those who are thinking of doing readings, that the whole point is don't project something from these people onto your chart, such as that, oh, I'm also Gemini or I'm also whatever, because the whole idea is what do you do with your cycles? Your cycles are there. You cannot get out of your cycles. But your cycles, if you navigate properly, they can be very helpful in moving you forward in life, or just realizing what you're in and adapting your behavior to that rather than flying blind or navigating without a compass, so to speak. That's the thing to realize about astrology. So
I
yeah,
appreciate that you're saying that, and it's also true in card readings. There are actually no bad or good cards in my view. To kind of say that it's within the context.
exactly.
It's
Yeah,
within the
exactly.
context. You know, a three of swords if you're miserable at your job, it might be a good outcome to just move on and do something next. So, I mean,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
no such thing. I mean, yes,
yeah, and swords in general, the way I would interpret, or it's like uh, Saturn, if it affects through the air element, which is what swords connects to, it's negative thinking. Negative thinking will always get you in trouble. Whatever the situation is, you have to figure out a way to drop the negativity because it's as though you're creating a negative magnet, that then attracts negativity to you. This has been well documented by so many people. It's why positive thinking is so popular, or why doing gratitude practices is so popular, because it puts the
yes,
mind on Jupiter
do
instead of,
something.
Saturn will drag you down. It'll always show you the glass half empty, but Saturn's greatest asset is that it's the planet of focus and concentration. So if you pair it with Jupiter, it's a fabulous alliance and you can do really well. But you need to know what your cycles are, because it's easy to say this, but if you're in a Saturn cycle, it's challenging. Yeah, during the period you start to doubt everything. You think, oh, maybe this doesn't work, and no, I should be as negative as possible, which is not a good
Yes.
idea, right?
Well, thank you, Andre. And if you're watching me on Andre's channel, I also do readings just using cards and other tools, but that's
Yes.
what I do. So thank
I'll,
you,
I'll put
Andre.
I'll put your information on the
Likewise.
description of the video.
Likewise. Bye, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, and we certainly appreciate your comments to hear what you thought, and we wish you very well. This is the beginning of spring if you're in the northern hemisphere, so also happy spring to everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone.